Okay, so this is just a video and really just continuing on from the previous video, but nothing about food for thought or food of the matrix or whatever you like. It is just, I really don't know what it's about, to be honest. It's a fantasy, so look, we're human beings, we're spiritual beings, same thing, in a rather unique body in a matrix type reality. A matrix type reality means that the reality is not random, that it is a game. When you have a game, you have usually two sides. If you're like myself and unaware that you're in a video game reality, or was unaware that I was in a video game reality, then, this type of video is probably not something that you're going to get or think is a reality or even a possibility or even, but like I say, everything is a fantasy to some extent. And I just say that with the videos because, different people will see reality a different way. This is just me rambling about how I see it. And, if others see it in a similar way, share that fantasy, share that fairy tale, or share that idea, or even the possibility that we could be headed more in that fantasy direction too. There's many ways, as I say, of looking at every single thing. Usually many alternatives. What is the correct one is whatever you think it is. But what you think it is, I might think that this is the reality and it could be something totally different. Doesn't mean it's so. No, of course not. There would be a correct reality, a bottom line basis of what everything is. And what am I talking about? Oh, goodness gracious. Look, I'm going to ramble about the Matrix again, okay? Now, we live in a matrix, in a world, okay? Now, how random you think that world is, or in other words, how natural you think it is, how random you think it is, how, just how random you think it is depends on each individual person. Someone like myself says it is not random at all. Someone like me, I take it to the high fairyland level. I say it is not random in any way. I say there is nothing random about it at all. Not even down to the finer points. Because many people would probably agree, even with someone like myself or someone else, when they say, no, of course it's not random because, yes, we live in a society, we live in a world where things are controlled to some extent and, we follow certain ways of doing things, we follow certain regulations, we endorse those ourselves half the time. That's an interesting point. That is, I only would like to be able to explain these videos clearer. But that is for the Matrix to do. Because, as I've said before, if you've listened to other stuff and you go along this line, then everything is reversed. So therefore, and also, it's not just this reverse, which is also very extreme, in my way of looking at it, okay? How far you want to take it or how far extreme is up to you. You might only go along with some things, and you might say the rest is taking it too far. Now, the idea that that we're in this matrix, which means that everything is operated by, other entities. So we ourselves, human beings that is, because notice at the start I said human beings are spiritual beings. Human beings are different to those that control this world, those that control the matrix, in other words. Human beings do not operate the matrix. They don't create the scenarios. They are the players in the matrix. Their thinking as human beings is the creator of a reality. But as the human being is playing in a matrix, which is more of a mind game matrix in a way. In fact, it is a total mind game matrix, really. But because I'm limited and don't understand fully what I'm talking about, in the sense that I don't, I haven't got the capabilities to put it clear enough, and I haven't got the understanding of the cellular level, you could almost say, of the matrix. I haven't got that understanding because it's beyond my kind of thinking, and it's beyond my a bit like if you've studied something, you study a certain field, so whether you get it right or wrong, you still understand certain things about it. I don't understand anything about much at all, so it is purely based on what I see, my experience, and the reality that the matrix exposed itself to me a few years ago. Just over 3 years ago, it started to open up or expose itself or come down, depending on which way you look at it. All three apply, because the matrix only exposes itself when it, for whatever reason, with the players that are playing, the human beings, which are the players in the video game, for whatever reason, they're like, now we show you the game. We show you that you're in a video game. Of course, this is also done gradually. It's not done usually overnight, and you yourself have to do a bit of work, because the matrix does prefer it if you play unknowingly in the video game, because that way it's more fun for the operator of the matrix, shall we say. As you can imagine yourself, if you're playing a video game, which you might have done in your life, I've never been big on video games. I've said that before. I'm not a very good player and I don't like playing video games. But there you have it. All along I've been in one, only a real life one, as opposed to a mechanical one. But it's a bit similar, because the beings that control it are much more into mechanical and technology. That is their means of operating in the matrix. Human beings do not operate by technology, except now, of course, we do, because we have allowed ourselves, not only, we've always played in the matrix, but now we're playing in the matrix with the matrix God entity and its many, many, many beings. You're playing now with their choice of of game playing strategies or their choice of game playing mechanisms. We're really playing right in the thick of it now. It's almost like, most people are playing for, as I've said before, they're playing for the wrong team, or they're playing for the opposing team. They're playing against themselves, in other words. Like I've been playing against myself most of my life and against others that are, human beings, as opposed to playing against those that are on the other side. Now that's a bit complicated, but it's a video game. It's a game of chess. I've never played chess. It's a game of chess, except that, you don't know the moves. You don't know the pieces. Just like I said, I have never played chess, so I don't know the rules. I don't know the pieces. I don't know, as a human being, most of us are playing, what's the word? Playing by ear. I think they say that in music, you're playing by, except that we're tone deaf. That doesn't make any sense, I know. I'm being ridiculous. But we're playing a game of chess, right, against opponents that know the game, know all the strategies, have got, you're playing in a domain where your powers are limited and their powers are enhanced, because you're playing in a technological chess game, and human beings are not technological. Are we? Well, I don't think so, but, if you think, well, of course we walk around with the mobiles and we have the computers, so of course we are now. But it's not our nature, it's not what we are, and, the technology we have is not comparable to the technology of the technological beings. Because that is what they are. So they have developed their technology to a high level. Whereas human beings, as I've said before, their technology, if you want to look at it, being a human being, it's not technology. See, I'm looking for words here, but to be a human being, you just naturally, your thinking creates the material reality. The power of your thought combined with your emotion and feeling, because the technological beings lack emotion, feeling. They do not have that. That is a human thing, something that we've gradually lost. And this is to our great detriment. Even I used to think, it's pathetical that I get upset over certain things, because I used to see that other people didn't, and I thought it was a weakness, because it brought me down, which of course that's the idea too, because we live in a negative vibration matrix. Human beings are vibration, they are 100% frequency vibration. They're like I can't describe it because I can't see it. See, what I'm trying to say is that, and I can't say it well enough. See, we should be able to see all these things. Human beings should be able to see what they are. They should be able to see the other entities. They should be able to see the chess game. We should be able to see the technology. I don't mean that see the mobile phone that I'm using right now. I mean see what it really is. See what these things are really doing to the natural human beings and any natural life source. Human beings are the only real life. The only real life, in my opinion, okay? Everything else is dead life. In fact, it's not life at all, really. But if you do see that something is, say, mechanical and it moves and it does things, it appears to be life. And it can, you could have, theoretically speaking, technical things that can do more than a human being. This is a reality. And this is why it's very hard for me to explain what I'm talking about, and I'm making a big muck of it, because it's cheese and chalk. I don't know, but it's like comparing two things that are so different, and yet that is what we're in. So it's kind of strange. It is strange. It's unnatural. It's not conducive. What we're living in now, the world we live in now, is not conducive to a human being at all. It is. In fact, the whole video game, Matrix chess game, is not about enhancing or being a benefit to a human being in any way. It is the complete reverse of that. It is about winning the chess game, and that the human being is the source, although it is the source of the matrix, because the thinking and the thought with the feeling and the emotion is creating the reality. You're in a chess game of a mind chess game that is about checkmate, and it is about checkmate on a human being. That is the game. That is the purpose of the game. That is the goal of the game. That is the desired result of the game. This has pretty much already happened. But, it's a funny chess game. Almost as funny as my, whatever you want to call it is that I'm talking about, or commentary or whatever, words do fail me most of the time, as you can see. The difficulty, I think, is like this, if I can try to put it somehow. It's a chess game that's already been played and already been won by the God entity and his league of champion demigod players or disciples. They're players. They have already won their checkmate to a large extent over the much smaller number of human beings. I've mentioned this before in previous videos, that the numbers count, but they don't count anywhere near as much as what you would think. Because the human being is unaware what they are, that they're in this game, unaware and at such a low level for a human being. They cannot see the other beings. Human beings are literally, as I've said before, fighting, punching air. Literally, they're fighting blind because they cannot see the negative entities. They cannot, even those that think it is so, like myself, can still not see them. So it's probably, I'm not sure which is the worst. It's actually more frustrating in some ways, and because one, if you know they're there, and they know you know they're there, they're going to play harder, because half of their game is a cat and mouse game. A lot of their strength lies in their invisibility, as you can imagine. It's very hard to win a battle against a foe that you can't see. Just like you can't see technology. That's why I'm just going to ramble here and not make any sense. So as usual, make of it what you will. There's a saying, money is the root of all evil. Money is part of the matrix. It's a tool of the matrix. Money is the root of all evil, but I would personally say that technology is the root of all evil. Because behind the money is the technology, the technological beings, the God entity, a technological being. Technology, human beings, as I said in another video, I think I said it, human beings have their brand of magic. Their magic has been all but extinguished. By that I mean any ability most human beings have, all of us, has been taken from us or pushed down to such an extent that we can't use it, and most of us don't even know what our abilities are. I would think that at full potential, this is fantasy, so take it as you will. I would imagine that at full potential, instead of the 1% that we're at, as I've said before, as you can see, we're just barely breathing. I'm just going to go on to the song there again. It's really not funny, I know, but, where was I? That's a good question. At the low level that we're at in comparison, but even, like the ability, I would think that this is just my own thing here, because we all know that different human beings do have different abilities, even in the matrix, even at limited level. But don't forget that when you're looking at most human beings in the matrix, most of the time you're not actually looking at real human beings. Most of the time you're looking at the demigods of the matrix. You're looking at the human demigods of the matrix. They're the chosen ones of the God entity. They are chosen to use all the human abilities so that they, are the demigods of the Matrix. Because if you want to be a demigod of the Matrix, you have to incorporate human qualities into your personality and into your projection to entertain the humans, or to keep the humans worshipping you, because humans like to worship other humans. That's the trick of the Matrix. That's part of the chess game. This video is much worse than the previous one. I can't believe that. I'm getting more bungled up than ever. This is really bad. This is really real. Yeah, well, that's the Matrix, you see. But like I say, the human being, I think, at high potential, or even at mediocre potential, has abilities, okay? But I would think that the higher the frequency and the higher human beings go, and don't forget, we're at 1%. So of course, I'm making that up about the 1%. I don't know what the percent is, but that's just an example. I would say that we're at rock bottom. So therefore, whatever abilities we have, they're not being utilised, at all. But I would imagine. See, what I'm trying to say is that you can still see that some human beings, even in the present time, because we're in the worst of worst times for a human being, because we're in the World War III that is heading towards its closure. And that means that is, everything is at its worst. Everything's at its extreme. The Matrix now, or the Earth or the world, is not a human being's earth or world at all. It's not. We're playing in a world, but it's against the odds completely. Because that's how it's gone. Because if you're on your final move in the chess game, you pretty much got your opponent's cornered or whatever. I think that's how it works. Checkmate, But I'm sorry about this. I'm making a real bungle here. Oh dear. But I would think that at high potential, probably most human beings would all have many abilities. In other words, you know how sometimes you like now you could say that I might see some human beings, assuming they're not of the Matrix, because you see them. Because if they're of the Matrix and they're a demigod of the Matrix, that's a different ball. They're playing in our same ball game, but they're not. They're not on our side. They might appear to be. It seems funny that you should worship someone who's on the opposing team, but that's the Matrix, you see. That's what it's all about. It's all about everything. Because it's now in its final stages, everything is extreme. So everything is at 6s and 7s. I heard that in a movie. So that means everything's kind of everything is being used. Everything. So, whereas, maybe a few years ago or in the past at different periods, there might have only been some things that were confusing the Matrix or confusing the human being. I say confusing the human being because it's a game of chess that is designed to get the human being to play the way the Matrix wants you to play, so it can then get checkmate and win the game. It's a chess game. I don't know how to play chess, so I shouldn't even say, why is she talking about chess when she just said she can't even play the real game of chess, and here she is talking about a world chess game. Well, there you go. That's the way it goes, isn't it? You know. Okay, so I don't know how to play chess, and I don't know much about the world, but I can see a game when, when it's being played. But that's because the Matrix doesn't care that I see that the game is played now too. See, that's what I'm saying too. So, and that was its choice. For whatever reason, the Matrix will decide at some point that it doesn't mind some players seeing the video game. Or maybe it's like, it's your time for checkmate. But it's like any game that's played. I suppose players, all the players, and those that control the game, it's what you call it's a decision. Because it's a decision to when to play the game harder, when to centre more on certain players than others, and others leave them alone for a while. It's timing too. I've always said everything is timing, so timing has a big thing in it. I say that at this particular time, this is just from my own perspective, the Matrix was supposed to open up more to human beings. This was human beings' time to see the Matrix and to kindle long-lost abilities. But what I think would have happened, now obviously it hasn't happened, is probably that with the small number of human beings becoming aware of the Matrix, even though they're at 1%, even that in itself, if enough numbers come into play, I'm guessing this, I could be wrong, but I would say there is a fear element here, a fear element on the part of the negative entities. They have, they have the whole game 99% in their view. They have the players. They have the best players. They have the best mind. Okay, so mind control. Okay, maybe we'll go that far. They control the minds of most human beings because the Matrix is a mind matrix. Even the world we live in is a mind world, even if you didn't think it was a matrix, even if you thought it was halfway random or halfway anything. It's still a mind world in the sense that everything you get is from technology largely. It decides how you think about most things, and like the previous video, like to a certain extent, it decides quite a lot of how you are in just little ways even, and from little things to big things. I think I'm going to delete this video. Now the little Matrix Simba dog's going to make his presence known. Here he comes. You see this? Okay, so I'm going to go off onto the Simba Matrix dog. Why not? And there's a fly that's just come in too. That's another distraction because I don't like flies. Or at least I don't like them inside. And I'm not quite sure how he even got in. But like the dog is, a dog of the Matrix. Now, if you look at him, He's old. He's got a big grey face, which he never used to have. And he can't see a thing. He's blind. And he's attacked all the time. But he's still of the Matrix because the Matrix has full dominion over his actions. All his actions are controlled by the Matrix. This is a technological control, I would say. I won't go into the possession thing and all that because, one, I don't understand it enough, but, you're talking about technological beings and you're talking about possession and you're talking about using technology. They're all one and the same thing in many ways. It's just that I don't understand it because I'm ignorant on that because I can't see it. So you'd say, well, what are you talking about? Well, this is it. But what I'm saying is I should be able to see it. I shouldn't have to understand even science. A human being doesn't need to know anything because at full capacity, they just see it all. They don't need, all the rest is of the Matrix, even the science. It's just not necessary because, it's one thing to use science and say, oh, we think there might be something there. There might be something just beyond our, if you're at full capacity, this is why I say human beings are just, they are the centre of the Matrix and they're the centre of all. They're the only life force. But they're a life force that is down to its lowest level. So everything else looks better. That's because the Matrix has designed it that way. The Simba dog, right? Like I say, even now I can see him over there, he's gone over there to sleep now. And you see it screws with the human mind because just as the plane going overhead then makes a negative vibration. So, and the human being is all about vibration and frequency. So what I'm trying to say is that just that example even of the dog, like that's the dear little old blind Simba dog. Or is it Zoltan, Hound of Dracula? In the sense that it's controlled by another entity. It's controlled by a technology. And who's at the end of the technology? Or whether that technology possesses or whether it controls from afar. I should certainly like to know, but it matters not. Because that technology then is Zoltan, the Hound of Dracula, not the dear, blind, grey-faced, full of courage little Simba dog that used to exist. And I say full of courage because this is not my dog, But when the dog was younger, the dog was extremely loyal to its owner, and there's nothing this dog wouldn't do for its owner. It would jump through a ball of fire. It would jump over a cliff. And I've seen it do these things, more or less, at the owner's request. But it wouldn't do it now, because now it is taken over by a different owner. And that owner is a technological being. But when I look at the dog, I still see the same exterior. I see the dog act and know that internally it's taken over. But it sets up a terrible conflict in a human being. This is the whole purpose of the Matrix, is to set up conflict, particularly if that is your weakness. Whatever is your weakness, the Matrix will go for that. And it knows your weaknesses because it can read your thoughts. and also it watches. I just like to throw in this before I go off the thing, and I'm going all over the place as usual. And, I'm going to be very vain here for a second, in the sense that I'm going to say that, when it comes to like psychology and at a psychological level, I've always considered that I'm more than reasonable at dealing with psychological issues in other people. Obviously, like most people, you don't always handle all your own things so well. But that will depend on but either way, I've considered that I can usually not get too upset by other people getting too going over the top, or I try to understand. Okay, so what? But my point is this: that you could be the best psychiatrist or psychologist in the world as a human being. I'm not saying I'm that, but I'm saying that I'm not that bad. But either way, forget about me. You could be, theoretically speaking, the best psychologist. You could be all these names that they throw up that are in the past. But don't forget, they're the demigods of the Matrix. So that is really, of course they're going to look good because they're part of the ball game. So that's not really relevant, to be honest. I know I've bamboozled you and myself there by what I just said, but you could be the best psychologist in the entire world as a human being, but you are no match for the psychopathic God entity or even the demigods at a psychological level. This is strange in the sense that these beings have no understanding of psychology. A human being automatically understands the emotions and the feelings because it is only of the human being that these things exist. I'm getting angry here. I'm sorry. It's distressing for me, okay? And I'm probably not making any sense as usual. But you see, the demigods, the God entity, the same as the psychopathic personality types that are now the most prominent human being that exists in the earth, world, matrix, whatever, okay? Shouldn't have added that. Sorry. It's like this. A natural, normal human being understands psychology, understands a lot more than the Matrix God, a lot more than a psychopath. Like, for instance, how can I, who say that I have understand the psychology of how to interact to some extent, even though I've been, yes, you say, well, look, she's talking rubbish because she said that she was a hermit, more or less, and antisocial, etc. I know I said this and it's true, but I still was brought up and had only mingled the few people, because you can't avoid having a family, you can't avoid a few relationships, It was only when I was able to break from these relationships, mainly through the interaction of death, to be quite frank, most of the time, or quite serious things. So, but still, My point being that, like, if you are having a relationship with a psychopath, narcissistic psychopaths, you could be more intelligent than the narcissistic psychopath. You probably are. You could have more understanding of human emotion and of even human psychology, psychiatry, whatever you want to name it, than that narcissistic psychopath or the psychopathic narcissist or the whatever you like. It just means that they keep at it. They never let go. You see, the difference is that if you devoted, as a human being, if human beings devoted the same amount, like I'm doing now, you see. See, what I'm doing now, and I don't even want to do it, but I can't help it because I'm in a state of fear. So therefore, 24/7, my mind is racing with everything about the Matrix. It makes me understand things more, but it defeats the purpose of me being in the Matrix because I'm in a state of fear, which is bad frequency, which means the entities have the ability to attack at will because I've opened that door. Because fear and low frequency is not the state that a human being is meant to be in. If you are in a non-fear state of, of high frequency, where you're feeling really good, your abilities are enhanced and you become aware of everything. And, you know what's going. But I've confused this thing here. I know, I'm so sorry. See, there's so many aspects to the Matrix and to the human being, because that's why most people can't win this kind of chess game. There's no way that I can win the chess game or that a human being, because of all these things that I'm saying, because it's too complicated. But it's not how it should be, and it is it is tragedy in the sense that, because, like I say, the human being has more skills than its opposition. The human being is in this technology is limited by comparison with the human being. It's just that the human being is at almost non-existent level, so therefore the technology doesn't even have to be really great to beat a human being. But we are dealing with beings that have advanced their technology for a very, very, very long time. And, like I've said, the human being has not studied these beings. I have not studied these beings. I don't know what their psychology is. I'm only trying to figure it out now. Whereas they have studied me and you since the beginning. And that's all they do. That's all they do. They're like the psychopathic in a relationship. They're like a human being, even a high level, intelligent human being, can be up against a psychopath in this reality. Forget about the demigods and the God entity and all. Just at a human level, if you get even a human being right, a real human being up against, or in a chess game against a psychopath, even though the human being might have an IQ or have vast intelligence in comparison to the psychopath, the human being may have more understanding of psychology than the psychopath. I'm not putting this well, but you see, the psychopath is studying you 24/7. You're not studying the psychopath 24/7 because you're not a psychopath. You're a normal human being. So you don't want to spend your entire existence thinking about a psychopath and playing in some ridiculous chess game. But that's what they want, that's what they do. Because their goal is the same as the God entity and its demigods and minions and followers and disciples, whatever you want to call them, that bow down to this and believe in it, worship it, or might even just be in fear of it. As I am, but at the same time, that, it doesn't matter whether I'm in fear or not, because I'm not a suitable player for their side, and they know that. They might even want you to play for their side. Oh, they do want you to play for their side, especially depending on what they get out of it, because it's a chess game. I've gone off the thing, but so sorry. Look, you see, it's like this. It's like I say, the psychopath, is studying you 24/7. The psychopath is not thinking about anything else but how to mind play you. Like in that old Gaslight movie, which I have seen all the versions of that movie, and it is often thrown up by the psychologist and psychiatrist of The Matrix as an example also. Because they have to keep us playing, and they have to show that they are the intellect of the Matrix. And they are, but they get it from the human beings. But you won't see a human being a top psychiatrist in the world, or a top psychologist, or a speaker, or this or that. That will not happen. You won't get what is it? I could use names. A Freud or something. I don't know. Was Freud famous? Writing books, and you will not get a human being. You will not get a real human being ever doing that. It just doesn't happen in a mind game matrix, that is run by what it is. That's not how the game works. Because then that would be like giving the human being a checkmate, and that's not going to happen. Of course, if human beings were all a bit more, well, of course a human being wouldn't want to do that anyway once they actually were aware, and they wouldn't need to. That's all part of the Matrix mind game too. That's only because we are in a mind game matrix that we have to have these books written, and these brilliant people talking about things. That's because human beings know there's something wrong. And because there is a lot wrong with human beings, because they're being played in a chess game and worked into an abnormal state for a human being. You could almost say, almost to the same point of insanity that the God entity entertains and is normal for those beings, because they're not human beings, so they don't see things the same way. Technology isn't interested in life force. Technology doesn't use feeling or emotion to create a reality. It can't do that, and it doesn't desire to do that, but it can't do it anyway. It's a vampire that feeds off a human being for that. It's a parasite. That's why we call them the Archon mind parasites. The Archon is the I think. Well, I don't know what it really is, but I use it as I think some others do, as a collective term for the God entity and all that are followers, worshippers, believers. What's that another word? I can't think of the word. Uh, collaborators in this chess game, with the aim of getting the checkmate on the thinking, feeling, creating human beings, the only life source, the life force of the matrix and the life force of everything, too, as far as I know. But that is not saying, don't forget that. I don't know what I'm talking about here. I have to be very careful with these videos. That's why I'm not keen on making them. It's a bit like the God entity, right? He's the God. He, she, it is the God entity. It is a duality God entity. It is not a singular entity. It is a duality. It is a God of war. But it is not a God of war and would not play the game the same as, say, the God human beings would play it, if you want to look at it that way. Let's say it's a battle of the gods, okay? I'm going into real fairyland here, and I'm really getting a little bit annoyed at myself even, because I prefer to make the videos calmer and more, let's say it's a battle of the gods, okay? I don't say that a human being is a god, okay? But then again, the God entity is a god of this domain, and is the god of this domain only in the sense that it is worshipped, it is believed in, it controls everything, it has total dominion over this earth. But I could theoretically make a god of the magnifying glass if I wanted to. Why shouldn't I? I can't see without it, but look, hey, if I put it up, all of a sudden what was unclear to me becomes remarkably clear, just like magic, just like the magic matrix, just like the God entity opens the eyes of his followers, shows them magical technology, and they're amazed. The human being doesn't see any magic or anything in itself. Either way, I've lost my train of thought, as you can see. And yes, dear little grey face over there is starting to also put his little input into the video, as he did in the last one. Does that mean I have to get up again? Goodness gracious. See, this is where the dear little blind dog... See, theoretically, if I get angry with a grey-faced blind dog, not only does it look bad for me as a human being, even low, those that would point that out to me are not in the human being category, in the sense that they're probably psychopaths, but that doesn't make any difference because they're in it to play the game against the human too. So, but also, it's not just being aware of that, but in reality, even low, I know the dog is possessed or taken over. To me, it still looks like a living dog, and it still looks like and is in the same form as the Simba dog that I saw as a real dog. So it is hard for me to separate from that. And also, I'm like, I am in this matrix. But I still take everything to be real. I know some things I can separate and say that is negative. That's negative, that's done by a negative entity. I'm walking away. But it is a trick, it is a chess game. So, so I look at the dog now, and so I play the game as though the dog is, the same dog that I wanted to or felt obliged to center my energy onto, to, to see the dog lived as long as possible, and, almost to the exclusion of everything else. That was before the Matrix exposed itself, because the Matrix, that's the funny thing about the Matrix, it doesn't want you doing simple little things. Here we go again. Look, there was the saying that I'd heard years and years ago from someone, from a psychopath, by the way, which is interesting. No good turn goes unpunished. And I thought, what a strange thing for that person to say, because this person was always doing good things, or apparently good things. Of course, those psychopaths, so whatever good thing they do is to serve themselves, because that's how psychopaths are, just as the God entity does that. But like I've said before, to do things and to be seen to doing things. Whereas like almost sound like the demigods or the God entity and the psychopaths myself, because that's another thing. They like to be seen to be doing the things. And me, in talking about the dog, saying, oh, well, I wanted to do this and I want to do... Look, it puts you in the same category, because to be quite frank, you can't tell the difference. But I would think that, look, I don't know. I guess if you're a human being, you probably can't help but do it anyway, because you'll see something as real even if it's not. And also I have to say, if Simba, the dog, is taken over by technology, unlike human beings who we almost invite it sometimes. Some human beings almost invite it. There is always a choice, but I wonder how much choice an animal has, to be taken over by technology. You know what I'm saying? So it's, like I say, you're in a double mind. And boy, does the Matrix like you to be in a double mind, because it likes this duality thing going in every single aspect. So I would be guilty when I get angry with a dog, like I did that in another video, to where you're like, hey, I'm not really dealing with the same dog here, so you lose your temper, and so then you feel guilty and bad. That's low frequency, all this sort of stuff. And then there's the fear element too, because sometimes you can be frightened. Because you want to survive yourself, but you also want the animals to survive. I'm not making any sense here at all in this. But like I say, the human being is no match for even a less intelligent, quite limited psychopath even in this reality, if the psychopath focuses all its energy, as I say, onto defeating a human being at the chess game. You know, like if you're in a relationship with people who are negative and are indirectly working for the matrix and the negative world, the negative God, they're indirectly working for it, because I don't think that every psychopath consciously is working for the matrix. By that I mean they're doing the same things as the God entity and its minions and its demigods. It's the same purpose, but they're only doing it at a personal level because they have been, because their circumstances have led to them to that same mental state. That is the goal of the matrix God entity, is to turn human beings into the same mindset as itself. In fact, to turn human beings into children or representatives for itself. To turn it away, to turn a human being away from being a human being, which was what, it's a bit like saying they're trying to turn a bird into a fish, or a bird into a land animal, or that's not a very good example. No, it's not a very good example, because there really isn't any comparison to a human being, not at high level. Whereas, like, you talk about a bird and you say, well, a bird can fly. That's a miraculous thing. And it is too, because even, like we only fly around in an aeroplane, as I say. Technology, we use technology. But that's probably just the matrix having a chuckle, in a way, I would think. But I've lost my thing here. What I'm trying to say is that, like I've said this before about different animals, still have, most animals even used to have, abilities that most human beings have, but only be like one or two abilities. As human beings almost appear to have very few. But we do have the mind, we think we have the mind, but we don't have that either, because it's taken over by the matrix. I'm not making sense here. This video's gone right downhill. I should try to get back on track here somehow. Okay, I'm going to use an example. I could use a million examples, and I really could, because once you become aware of the matrix, you realise that everything that happens is part of it. And I'm only going to use little examples. And this just shows you that everything in the matrix is covered now. It is down to much smaller margins. In other words, it's more down to details. That's because the matrix is all-inclusive now. It's total, it's total dominion over the matrix. There's no human matrix. It's a total, technological matrix in every aspect. And you can take that physically, or you can take it psychologically, or you can take it at any level you like, because you might say, well, look, this is not possible. But that's because until you come from the standpoint that the human being is the centre of the matrix, and that the world revolves around you, and that the chess game centres around a human being. Because if you look at the matrix, you kind of think, well, look, but everything is human. You know, but that's not the point, because you don't realise that although everything appears human, you're looking at two sides. You know, you're looking at two opponents playing chess, you know, in a mind game matrix. But the only difference is that on one side you have the matrix god that has full dominion over the entire chess game and the entire matrix, and its demigods, its disciples, its followers, its humans that back up this this team, shall we say. Most psychopaths don't back up human beings, they back up the demigods and the god entity. That side. You know, be like, you know, they don't, even if they're not consciously aware of them, because like a lot of psychopaths are playing against individual humans, and that's all they're interested in. So they only focus on one human being with the purpose of getting a checkmate on one human being. But that is a great victory for the Matrix God entity and his team, because that's all they do. But human beings don't get that, because they're like, you know, but, you know, we're all human beings, but we don't get that there's two sides. And we don't know that the game's being played. Now, the other point is that, of course, and a lot of people are aware of this, that this is not a game like you would see in a normal chess match or even a normal game or sport of any sort. In a normal game or a normal sport, like if you had a game of football, if memory serves me correct, you have 13 players on one side, 13 on the other. They're usually matched up fairly equally, in the sense that you might have a pack of forwards that are a lot heavier. On one side, 3 players, another side, 3 players that are round about the same. You know, in other words, it's an evenly matched field to an extent, except that some players might be better than others. But it's still, for all practical purposes, you still got the same numbers. Now, in this matrix game, the numbers are completely... It is not a game that has any rules, because the matrix god doesn't feel obliged to play by human rules. Matrix God plays by its own rules. In fact, makes up the rules and has no problem playing a unbalanced game. By that I mean that, not interested, the human being will play with 13 players. But the Matrix God is quite happy to play with 1,000 players against the 13. If the Matrix God can get 1,000 players to play against the 13, that's how the game will be played. Because the Matrix God justifies this, and not entirely wrongly so, in that he says the human beings are the centre of the matrix. They are different beings to us. They, you know, it is not my fault that they have allowed me to bring them down to 1%, or to where they can hardly play. You know, I played according to the rules. I've just mind gamed them. You know, to a certain extent, the minute I could get them away from them knowing where they come from, what they are, and they have no idea of the beginnings. They've lost sight of it all. You know, now I've got them playing for me. And, you know, the the reality that I've now got them to checkmate and that it's a completely unbalanced game, to where most people would see it as, knocking your, kicking your opponent when they're already on the ground dying. It's kind of like that. But you see, just hold on for a second. Oh. Well, there was almost a victory just then. I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I literally nearly tripped over myself, and if I go down, I won't be getting up because I had to let the dog out, and, I got all this stuff on the floor because the dog, I won't go into it, but either way, it's all because of the dog, but I nearly tripped over it getting... in fact, my foot is sore from the tripping over almost. Now, you see, this is the Matrix too. You say, no, this cannot be so. Yes, it is so. Yes, of course, I needed to slow up because you have to be aware of a Matrix. You have to be aware that you're in this continual game. You shouldn't have to live like that. No human being should have to live like that, to where every second of their waking hour is like, I'm in a World War III, playing imaginary opponents that you wonder where they even are. Okay, so sometimes you might know, but you're still dealing with astronomical numbers at this point in time. Because the real reality is that, yes, that I've said this before in another video going way back, based on a movie, that human beings at a higher capacity, a higher frequency, level out those numbers. So you can have, like that movie where it was you can have at high frequency. The Matrix finds it very easy to get me into low frequency. Very easy, as you can see. Some people it is harder than others. It is. In fact, I'll say this while I'm on this subject, just about myself. Someone like myself, I've often said that in the past, long before Matrixes, I've often said that I was the sort of person that can be completely defeated and brought down by the smallest things. So I considered myself very, very, very weak and pathetical that way. And this is still true. And it is, and I actually knew this because what I'm trying to say is things that don't bother other people, most people around, and I'm talking about normal people too. I'm not talking about, those that are of the Matrix or anything like that. I'm talking about just normal human beings. Most of what bothers me does not bother normal human beings, just average human beings. So I can be very much controlled and brought down quite easily by things that other people would laugh at. But by the same token, I have noticed in my own lifetime that some things that bother other people, that they would consider normal, very serious things, they can be water off a duck's back for me. So that's kind of interesting. In other words, quite, I would say that quite traumatic things that other people would consider high trauma, where you'd get them maybe seeing it on the TV, where they'll even make a documentary on it, and they'll be carrying on that, something's happened and it affects their whole life and it's the end of the world. To me, it's water off a duck's back. It's like, that happened. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. Nothing broken. A little bit of a jolt to the ego. But you must remember we're dealing with ego a lot in this reality. And I've got an ego like everyone else, but but my ego was kind of different that way. No, I think perhaps I've got that wrong too, because I had an ego like everyone else, but a lot of my ego was much more centred on what the Matrix expects. So I was completely Matrix controlled and completely mind controlled by the Matrix, because I thought you had to be a player in this Matrix. I thought that, even though I really didn't want to be, the Matrix was able to convince me that, yes, the Matrix is all important. The demigods are the demigod. I was very big on that, very influenced by that. Very, it wasn't about, oh look, I can just gone off the track here. But that's just an example of how each individual, depending on your strengths and weaknesses, the Matrix will find a way to get to you. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, is that it doesn't really matter. Most of your abilities will be suppressed. But even if you have strengths even if you had a strength of character, say, the Matrix will find a weakness in that somewhere, and will, I don't know whether character is the right word, but in your personality, in fact, the Matrix will use even your good points, which is like the previous video. Good things will be used by the Matrix to work against you, and and to work against others, and to sidetrack you like I am being now. Just hold on for 1 second, if you will. I think I'll have to fold up, and this video will probably have to be deleted. Maybe I'll try again.